So yeah, I would like to welcome you all to our third public assembly, translated into Slovene, Javna seja. It's a cycle of events we host, where we host artists of which voices should be heard. The events are curated by the platform Ustanova, the institution, and Priključje. My name is Luka Volk. I am a member of the platform Ustanova. And with me tonight is Slikback, a DJ and producer of Kenyan descent, featured on Mixmag's 25 artists you need to watch in 2019. And also a member and contributor to the infamous Nyege Nyege Festival and its label. You will also be able to catch him perform tonight in Club Monokel alongside Mapalma and Alba El Jelly. Don't know if I pronounced that right. So let's get to the questions. Let's start off with the basics. You grew up in Nairobi, Kenya, and I've read somewhere that electronic music or even maybe dance music, mainstream music, wasn't really a part of your life. Could you just maybe tell me how you got into electronic music, and also how did you start producing your own music at the start?
Um, Hi. So I got into electronic music through the radio. Um, uh, Kenyan radio doesn't really play anything interesting or diverse. It's just the usual rap songs or dancehall songs that play over and over. But once I just a random station played. I think it was David Guetta or something. He had made a song that was a bit more interesting than what I was used to. So yeah, that kind of got me into electronic music, like more EDM type stuff. But I couldn't really get access to the music that I would hear one time on the radio. So I had to wait and um, just had to wait for the radio to randomly play a song that's good again. So I just kept listening to more radio music, and by listening just to more radio music, I got into dancehall and trap and all this other stuff that I wasn't really growing up listening to. And actually, growing up, my mom is very religious, so um, we she only plays gospel music in the house, and we only have like gospel CDs and stuff like that. So it was all I was used to, and I was also like very church going, and yeah, not really looking, didn't really think music was as interesting, but for sure I listened to a lot of music. So when I had uh, EDM, I got into EDM and trap and all that stuff, and it kind of drove me to start wondering. It drove me to start thinking about how the sounds are made, how the build ups and the drops and the progression of the song happens. So I had to find some software which I would use to test a few ideas I had of how I think EDM should sound like. But I was very shitty at it, so I just had to download a program which would give you loops, and it would give you loops like chords and kicks and snares and whatever, and you would have to arrange them and create a song. But that kind of taught me how progression of tracks work and how to create the flow of a song, kinda. So when I got into university, I got Fruity Loops, a cracked version, and I started testing out different stuff. I thought um, I wanted, I just wanted to combine different elements of different stuff I liked. So initially, I used to try and make EDM, like Avicii type music, but I wasn't really good at mixing and all that stuff, so it sounded very rough. But a few of my friends thought it was a unique sound and interesting sound, so they pushed me to just keep going. And later, uh, I got to develop the sound when I met the Nyege Nyege crew, and it ended up becoming what I'm making now, sort of a blend of a bunch of different stuff.
So after you met, as you said, the Belgian promoter, Derek de Brue, the founder of the Nyege Nyege Festival, and also its label, you also started working on some production in his own studio. Maybe how did you guys meet? Was it just like going out at parties? Because I've also read that at university you had to ride to a party for 3 hours and afterwards come back the next day for university. Um, yeah, how did you meet the guys? And maybe since you started talking about Nyege Nyege, maybe tell us some more about Nyege Nyege.
Yeah, so in university, I didn't really know the scene. So the university I went to was in Uganda because I'm originally from Kenya, but I got into a school in Uganda to study architecture. So I went there to study, and music became sort of a hobby I would do after class and stuff like that. So one of my friends who knew the scene a bit better in Uganda told me about this festival called Nyege Nyege and how amazing it is, and how uh, because my music is very weird, they would like it. So I was like, I would like to see how I would like to see some DJs playing something other than dancehall and stuff like that. So they pushed me to go to a party one Saturday, and we went like super early, like at 4 p.m. That's when we arrived for the party, and the DJs were just sitting on the like having pizza or something, and I they just pushed me to go and introduce myself to them and show my music. So I went to them with like my phone and some earphones, and I played one of the DJs my song very awkwardly. But yeah, I didn't think he was interested. But later in the night, he introduced me to Derek, who co-founded Nyege Nyege Festival. And Derek gave me his email and told me to keep in touch and send him some music. So when I went back to school the following day, cause there are no there's no transportation at night to go back to where my school was. So you have to stay at the party to till 7 a.m. and then get a taxi. They're called taxis, but they're like public transport stuff. So yeah, to get a taxi back to school. And so I started emailing him songs, and later on he thought my sound was developing well, so he brought me to the studio in Kampala, where I met other producers, and I found this hub of creativity where everyone's just having fun and making music. And so I loved the vibe, and I decided to stay there after school closed. For my holiday, I just spent it at the studio, making music. And the other question, Nyege, what's Nyege? Nyege is a festival that happens in Jinja in Uganda, and it's just a blend of every musical genre that I can think of. So from traditional bands to trap artists to rock to uh, super weird footwork like Jaylin played last year. And it happens every year in Ginger, and it brings in people from around the world, and locals go there too and get introduced to more diverse kind of music. And the crew itself, which the crew which started the festival, also has a series of parties in Kampala where they also play kind of diverse music, a bit more non-mainstream stuff. And they run two labels. No, they run one label called Nyege Tapes and a sub-label called Hakuna Kulala, which I now co-run. And they basically release just things we think sound interesting from the region, local artists or international artists collaborating with local artists, basically just to promote the sound in East Africa, because there wasn't really much attention to music from the region. Yeah.
And then there was also a pretty big controversy in 2018 about the Ugandan government trying to shut down the festival. Afterwards, they didn't shut down the festival. Boiler Room also came to the festival to promote it a bit. You also had your first debut Boiler Room there. Could you maybe tell us more about the government trying to shut it down? What were the reasons? What was the whole thing around it?
Yeah, so one thing about East Africa in general is it's a very conservative region, and I think the most conservative one is probably Uganda, and the government really doesn't like anything that they see as unnatural or uh, dark or uh, I don't know how to describe it, but even thinking about it musically, like there are sounds which people think, people hear and just think about witchcraft and like dark Illuminati type stuff, just because it sounds different. So a festival like Nyege Nyege, which plays so much music from all these different artists, and most of them are very experimental and dark and sometimes very openly, I don't know, like very open in their sexuality and stuff like that. It's very hard for the government to support anything like that. So last year, the there's a minister of ethics in the country. He's a pastor, and he's really against the festival running, and he basically sent a letter to the government saying that people are having sex with animals at the festival, which was a rumor, of course not true, but yeah, he said that people are having sex with goats, and um, there are homosexuals kissing in public and lesbians and stuff like that. So the government reacted swiftly and wanted to stop the festival. So there was all this online debate happening about Nyege Nyege and whether it should run or not and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, there was just so much funding that had been put into the festival, and a lot of major companies had also invested a lot into the festival, and people had already bought tickets. The location was already prepped, everything was set to go. So there was no way it could have shut down, and so it just proceeded. But that's just an example of how conservative Uganda is, and very opposed to change and anything that's slightly outside of the norm. So even to find performance type uh, music, like performance art type artists who like are trying out stuff in like theaters and stuff like that, it's very rare to find anyone who's daring to do something different, simply because it's really looked down upon and they see you as like just evil. Yeah.
So I know you had your first big breakthrough, so to say, in Europe on the Unsound Festival. Um, Philip Sherborne also wrote for Pitchfork this about your set, quote, the sweetest dopamine hit in music is the one where a sound stops you in your tracks, slackens your jaw, and makes you think, I have never heard anything like this. A first encounter with Slikback is a little bit like that. Um, what do you think of this newfound interest and trend regarding music emerging right now from the African region? Because it got like very into also maybe mainstream as in trap, but also I don't know. Let's say that I don't want to say Boiler Room is the authority here, but it also got like on a lot of Boiler Room sets.
Uh, I think it's amazing to see the attention East Africa is getting at the moment, and uh, my friends also getting like super amazing reviews and attention. And it's very unexpected because it wasn't really planned, and no one really makes music with that kind of vision that it'll go this far. But it's amazing that somehow what we were doing the villa is where the studio where we were making, where we had the residency, where so when we were making the music, we didn't really think about like, oh, we are going to tour the world and stuff like that. I mean, the idea was there because we saw that it is possible, but no one really believed it. And when after Unsound, for me, I started seeing how people respond to my music, and it was amazing. And also, my friends are starting to tour as well, and they're making amazing music as well. So it's really cool to see the amount of people who want to hear something different. And at the moment in East Africa is where people are finding something that they hadn't heard before. So like Singeli from Tanzania, which is becoming a really big thing. They perform one of so Singeli is a genre from Tanzania, which is like 170 BPM type loop based music, and one of the duos who make Singeli actually performed at the Berghain, and it was crazy because I mean they don't even know what the Berghain is, like if it's a big deal or not, but it's amazing to see how far East African music is getting, and it's really a blessing. Yeah.
By now, you have already released two LPs. One is Lasakaneku and Tomo. The second one being released like about a month ago in February. Um, and you also stated, or as we talked before, you didn't say that, but I have read everywhere that the last count of records that you made was 400, which is quite a lot. A lot of them not released, only played in sets that consist only of your own productions sometimes, or even at most times. So the question about that would be, how come you manage to be or can be so hyper productive? And as well, what is your workflow like when you are working on the records?
Um, so the EPs aren't really made on a schedule, so it's just working on as many songs as possible and seeing which ones sound the best. Sometimes out of like 50 songs, only two are picked or one, and we think that maybe that had an interesting sound. And Alan and Derek will tell me like, yo, this is really cool. Do you wanna build something around this sound? So initially, Lasakaneku was the first time I was trying out different sound. So everything I was making before Lasakaneku was very obvious genres like trap and gom and EDM and house music and stuff like that. So with Lasakaneku, it was the first time I really tried something different, and the first songs that were picked were maybe two songs, and then I had to build three more songs that fit the sound, kinda. So it's sort of picking a sound that we all agree is a bit interesting, and then I go and try and build on the record from those two sounds and stuff like that. But with Tomo, it was more intentional. So after Unsound, I got really inspired by sounds I had had at the festival, because I wasn't really into noise music and really a bit more crazy rhythms and stuff like that. So after Unsound, I wanted to present what I've learned from a new experience. So with Tomo, Tomo is actually a Japanese word. It means friend. Yeah, it's just a thing I've been obsessed by. It's also like the logo on my hat. So I just wanted something that I thought shows who I am at that particular point. So I tried to incorporate more noisy elements and more synthesizer uh, uh, loops I create and stuff like that. So yeah, Tomo is very intentional. Lasakaneku was a bit more just, this is Slikback at this time, and then with the next one I intentionally wanted to show people where I am at that particular stage. And I think with future records, it's also going to be the trend where I'm not always going to be making the same kind of thing. So if I end up making like an ambient thing, I would want to show people me at that particular point and then move on to the next thing, because it kind of gets boring after some time. Like with Lasakaneku, it got a bit boring, like listening over and over to those songs. So you kind of get sick of a particular sound and you want to try something else. So it's always, it leads me to always keep trying, and sometimes it doesn't work and sometimes it works. So my workflow is very much waking up, and I love watching anime and movies and stuff like that. So I'm always watching something, and my laptop's open. I have whatever's running, whether it's Fruity Loops or Ableton, in the background, and I'm watching something or listening to music on YouTube. And the way I build tracks is in sections, so there'll be the first section, second section, third section, and depending on what I've been watching or listening to, it'll influence a certain section of the music. So I build up the first section and then move on to the next one after taking a break of like watching something. And you kind of realize when you're as relaxed, because I also produce on my bed. So I'm very much at at peak comfort. No stress. I'm just alone in my room on my bed and just working. And so it leads me to just create a bunch of trial and errors, uh, a bunch of things that sound like shit, but I think I should keep them because they were interesting at the time. So I end up making a lot of tracks uh, over the course of the time that I'm free. So when I'm like at the moment, I haven't really made much music because I'm on tour and it's very hectic. But whenever I get the chance to sit down and work on music, I just end up making track after track, not with the intention that it's going to be the best track I've ever made or something like that. I'm just looking for something that is interesting to me, and I just want to push sound. So that's how I end up making so many songs. I mean, it's now maybe over 400, but I don't like saying it because most of it is shit, and I don't like playing it. But yeah, that's what people know, so it's cool. Yeah.
So yeah, you also said you were currently on tour. Maybe if you have any impressions of the tour, how the tour has been going, and afterwards, I think we kind of laid out the foundation, and if there are any more questions from the audience.
Yeah, the tour is pretty interesting so far. Um, I think it's very weird, I think, coming from my background to see festivals happening like this. Like the only two festivals people really know about in Kenya, at least me and my friends, the ones that we knew about were Tomorrowland and Ultra Music Festival, which play like super um, something. So I when I started touring, I didn't expect. I It's always unexpected every venue I've been to so far, cause I've played at festivals and also clubs, and always it's it's always interesting, and people always respond in different ways, and some of them think about it more academically and think about the sound like more like technically, and you'll see them standing in the crowd and listening to the patterns, which I've never seen before, and they'll come after and say something about the song, a song that I played at a particular point, and describe it in a certain way that even I didn't see it like that, but it makes so much sense when they say it. And sometimes it's just people who want to go hard and just lose their minds. So I think it's really amazing to see all these festivals and all their different intentions, because each festival has like different things they're trying to convey, like if it's diversity or experimentation or just straight up party vibe. So it's really cool, and I love touring in Europe so far. Yeah.
Any questions? Ok- Okay. So if not, I would like to thank you all for coming, and I hope to see you later in Monokel. Thank you.